What was the dream?
I was 100% certain that I was going to be the head coach of the Detroit Red Wings.
Do you miss the other trajectory, or do you feel like everything came together in the way that it was supposed to?
I always miss the athletics side of my life, but I would never change it or do anything different. Yes, the physical side of what we're doing here is really tough, but the mental side is sometimes even tougher. I think more people should start recording earlier and just roll.
Well, that's the best part of the conversation. And then you start
Yeah.
like interviewing and it's like, oh, well, where was that person that was here 10 minutes ago? My focus with you, I want to talk about your why, because through the why, people can get to know more about Fleece and Thank You, but also what else you're doing. What is Fleece and Thank You and why it's not just a blanket?
So Fleece and Thank You is a mission to make sure that every single child facing an inpatient stay at the hospital has color, comfort, and connection at the starting line of their journey. When they walk into that room, instead of the plain white sheets, the dark beige wallpaper, hectic, uncertain, chaotic, hanging on by a thread, they should see the colorful blanket waiting on the bed, lighting up the room. And when they walk up to that blanket, they should then be able to see that video message patch and watch a video from Rachel, who made this blanket for Chloe. And Chloe's going to watch that video and she's going to have the opportunity to send a message back out into the world to Rachel. And for Chloe, it's a reminder that, wow, somebody cared enough to show up at the starting line of my journey. And this is really scary, but I have a little sliver of hope because of the way this started that things might be okay. When they send that video back out, it's a reminder that, okay, I still matter to the world outside. I may be inside these four walls right now, but I've just sent this message out to the world of gratitude. Somebody out there cares, and now I'm back out in that world, and it gives them the hope that they can continue to fight and get through whatever that is, from a battle with cancer to a broken leg and everywhere in between.
And you knew from the beginning that connection was important to you when you started doing this. You told the story about being in Australia. Explain where you got the connection idea from. Put all of that together.
From a couple of friends who had gone through inpatient stays and some of the things I learned from them, and then just diving in. And every day I was at the hospital at Lady Cilento Children's Hospital in Brisbane, Australia, volunteering with Ronald McDonald House and Make-A-Wish, and like talking to these patients and their families. I just could see over and over this growing thread of, yes, the physical side of what we're doing here is really tough, but the mental side is sometimes even tougher for us. And it's the doubt and the worry. Are we doing the right thing? Is this the right medicine? Someone's coming in and out of the room telling you when you can eat, when you're going to get poked. There's so many things on the mental side that are really, really tough. For me, that mental side of what we do is such an important piece, and possibly larger than the comfort and the color is that concept that somebody cares. They're at their starting line. You get to see them, and you can actually send something back out into the world to them.
Talk about the blanket is not just a blanket.
There's so many things that a kid could get or a family could get in the hospital, and toys and things, but there's something universal about a blanket. And from the time you can remember as a kid, even to today, we all hopefully go home and you probably have your favorite blanket at home, and you like can put it around you, and you just know, and people are thinking of their favorite blanket. It's this interesting physical object that's universal. And for the family that gets it, hopefully they're able to say, hey, our kid has made it through the hospital journey. That blanket stays with them forever. Kids call it their best friend. They're taking it in and out of treatments. They keep it forever. For other families who aren't as lucky and maybe the patient doesn't make it, they hold on to that blanket forever. And we've had so many parents and families say, we hug this blanket every single night. It was in and out of the hospital with our son or daughter. Every night, it's the closest thing we feel to them because they wrapped it around their body, and now we get to do the same. And we had a parent say that we've cried over this, we've laughed over this. This blanket has become a vessel and has kept us connected to our son or daughter. And that's just really, really special.
I love that they have something that their kid can hold on to, and that if something does, God forbid, happen, they've got something left. Who was Nich when he was a little kid? Who were you like pre-Fleece and Thank You?
One thing I have always had, I think I was wired this way, I have always been aggressively curious. I have always been the kid in the room that hit their quota of questions and kept going and pushed the limit. Always. I was aggressively curious from the time that I can remember. Even in like school, I would have to truly say to teachers, like, have I hit my question quota today? Like, can I ask more questions? So that's a huge part of who was Nich as a kid, for sure.
What did you want to be when you grew up? What was the dream?
I was 100% certain that I was going to be the head coach of the Detroit Red Wings.
Were you a hockey player?
I played hockey and soccer since I could walk. Loved both sports, played them all the way up into the end of college. And I was just so certain I was going to be the coach of the Detroit Red Wings.
When did all of that change?
I would say that the dream still hasn't died. So if you're watching this, I'm on the market. But I mean, I could tell when in college at that point, I was like, okay, maybe I'm not going to be the coach of the Wings. But there's like so many paths out there. But there's also this wild pressure to know what you want to do when you're a freshman in high school. And the community that I was in, also there was pressure to really figure this out. Like, Nick, you've excelled at a lot of things. Like, what do you have this figured out and what's it going to be? And as I went through college, I tried so many different things, 5 different majors, tons of different internships. I went to classes that I was not even signed up for with friends and teammates because I just wanted to see what was out there and ask the questions. So I think all that to say, I still, heading into college, didn't really know what life was going to be, but I knew that I was a builder and I loved being on teams, and I've always been on team sports, never individual sports. And so I knew somewhere that was going to be a thing, and I knew that I was a servant. I knew that I loved to serve people. And in addition to being aggressively curious, I really believe I was wired to really, really care a lot about what does Rachel want in this life? What's short-term or long-term, and can I do anything to help her get there, to take a step, to get all the way there, to move 1 mile closer? And that connecting piece ended up being a foundation for where I went after that.
So were you always volunteering when you were younger? Was it something that you were doing all the time? Is it something that your parents instilled in you? Were you just that kid?
From an early age, I really understood the fact that to whom much is given, much is required. And I saw really early on, I'm starting this race at a different spot than some people start at. And that is by no doing of my own. I felt a really strong responsibility to do as much as I could with where I started this race on this life. So I was just really aware of that. And I think my family was huge in making sure I knew how good I had it and have it, and how much I do have a responsibility to do the best I can with what I've been given. And so serving others and having an impact on the world was, focus from really early on.
What brought you to Australia? Because you mentioned going to Australia. Was it for soccer? Was it for college? Was it to take time off? Were we just going to explore the world? Why Australia?
When I was playing soccer at Oakland University, I never thought I could play soccer past college. But my senior season had some teammates that were internationals and ended up having a good year. And they said, hey, Nick, I think that you could play beyond college. And all these opportunities were starting to creep up that were just opportunities past college that were me fitting into someone else's expectations. I was going to take the full-time job from this internship, etc. And none of them were something I looked at and said, that's what I'm supposed to be doing. And this door opened up to play overseas, and I took it because it was the one door that wasn't one of these expectations I was going to fit in. And ended up putting a highlight tape together and sourcing around and getting an agent, and found a club in Australia, bought a one-way ticket to a country 10,000 miles away, and didn't know a soul.
What did your parents say? Were they excited? Were they proud? Were they scared? Because we know parents, as soon as you're on a normal track, were they scared at first, or were they like, hey, Nick has a good head on his shoulders, he's got this?
They're the full range of emotions. Definitely scared and asking lots of questions. And there you go. That's probably where I get some of that from. I've been very fortunate that they have put a lot of trust in me, that I've got a good plan and can figure some things out. And I think at the end of the day, they said, look, this is really scary, and I don't know if we'd do it, but you're going to make your choices and we're going to support you. And it was still lots of tears when I hugged him goodbye.
How old were you at the time?
I was finishing up my senior year at Oakland, 22 or 23, 22 or something like that.
Sure.
Yeah, and off I went.
What got you started to volunteer? Because you volunteered while you were there as well. Did you have free time? I thought when you go to play, that is your whole day. You are playing soccer from morning to night. You don't have time to volunteer. Where did that come from?
Yeah, it was not the case for me. So you'd have, some weightlifting in the morning and then training in the evening. But you had a big chunk of the day that you had to yourself. And the beach and the weather, I enjoyed that for a couple days in a week or two. But I'm somebody who in college was on 10 different clubs and saying yes to everything. And so I was like, I'm going to just dive in here, and grabbed a job at a coffee shop and was serving coffees. And then I found some nonprofits. I said, I'm going to start to volunteer. I had a friend that was really close to me that had gone through a battle with cancer, and just got to know them through that and learned, wow, there's a lot more to this inpatient stay thing. So a lot of my volunteer time was with the Make-A-Wishes of the world, kids in the hospital. but also serving our homeless friends on the street is a big cause of mine, and have a pretty cool story about who I linked up with there and the work I was able to do during the day there.
Do you want to give me the short version of the cool story?
Short version would be I met these two 21-year-olds who started the world's first mobile laundry service for the homeless. Yeah, vans with washers and dryers can link up and go to any homeless park shelter where our friends are congregating and wash and dry their clothes for free, give them an hour of amazing conversation, help them scale the service from just 2 vans in Brisbane to now it's Australia-wide. They're washing hundreds of thousands of tons of laundry. It's been a really, really cool experience to be a part of the beginning of that.
Is it weird to just wash the laundry? Do we give them options to go bathe themselves and soap and all that stuff? Or are other organizations already taking care of that part? There was a disconnect with they're putting dirty clothes back on after they shower.
That's the right question to ask. We started as Orange Sky Laundry, and now it's evolved into Orange Sky Australia, which also has Orange Sky Showers as a part of it. So the van has washers and dryers and a shower right inside of it.
Are you still involved with them in some way, or you just guide them and give them consulting?
Friends and an advocate from the side is one. Miss them, and I'm always checking in, staying involved, and giving what I can from 10,000 miles away. They've really, really grown. It's been amazing.
How do you disassociate from helping people? I think that's partially why I don't volunteer, because I feel like sometimes I'm the person that's like, no, I'll solve all of your problems. You can all come live with me. How do you disassociate from that situation and just be the volunteer and not the I'm going to solve everything?
It is probably a similar question that I would ask like an EMT or a paramedic who's in front of trauma every day. That would be really, really hard for me to be in that type of environment. There's something called compassion fatigue. It's a very real thing. I had no idea about it before I started working in the nonprofit space, but the longer you are around certain situations, the easier you are able to cope with them. And I think it wasn't always easy, but I've learned some ways to make sure I have a healthy balance between what's work and what's not, what's volunteering and what's not, and how do I achieve this balance to be at my happiest.
So I want to talk about synchronicities, because you're volunteering in Australia, not just with your homeless friends, but also with people in the hospital. And then your time there ends and you're on the plane, and you said your twin sister texted you before you left on your way home. When did she text you?
I landed at LAX October 1st. I got a text from my twin sister.
So tell me what your twin sister does and what that text said.
My twin sister was in pediatric oncology nursing at the time at Mott Children's Hospital, and she texted me asking if I would make a blanket for one of her patients. Just one blanket, one patient. And I'm aggressively curious, as I said, so start asking, well, yeah, I can make a blanket, Tara, but do you need like 5 or 10? How many do you need? And, oh, we always need them, Nick. They changed the room. We never have enough. I'm like, well, let me talk to the hospital. Like, how many do they need? And got on with the hospital. They needed about 9,000 a year. I was like, holy smokes. You're one of the best hospitals around. How do you not have enough of this? Called every hospital. Every answer was the same. Fleece Thank You was born.
His twin sister works at Mott Children's Hospital. So she was the one that talked to him about how the hospital rooms are sterile and unaccommodating. And he had this idea to make these fleece-type blankets. Bam! It instantly started in I think it was November of 2015. And we were doing it out of our basement. So we had our house full of fleece. We had uncut blankets and tied blankets. I think we got close to like 800 of them. We had aisleways for Christmas. You could only walk certain directions in our house. And Nick he knew he had to get a warehouse. He got his first warehouse, and it just kind of snowballed from there. Both his mom and I are both very proud of everything he's done and everything he's got going here with Fleece Thank You.
For a normal person, I feel like what you took on, especially at that age, when it's like, okay, now we can have more fun. We can go to other countries. We can do other things. We can still keep playing soccer. Instead, you completely pivoted and put all of your energy and passion into Fleece Thank You. Do you miss the other trajectory, or do you feel like everything came together in the way that it was supposed to?
I always miss the athletics side of my life, but I would never change it or do anything different. I was ready. I was never going to be the next Ronaldo or Messi, and I knew that. It was cool to travel the world and play for a couple years, but I was ready to build and start the next thing, start my true legacy in the world. And that's why I was ready to come back. And so I would do it. I would make the same choice 10 out of 10 times for sure.
So in the beginning, you're starting alone. Scaling a business is scary. When you're curious, it's your name that's on the line. You're also the face of the business. So how do you take this little project and start to actually scale that? Because I'm sure you have it down to the millisecond of how many blankets you can make per person per hour. How many blankets per person per hour?
So we definitely know like the unit metrics on all of it. Like one person can make a blanket by themselves in about 25 minutes. If you're with a group of 4, you could probably do one in about 15 minutes on your first one. You're going to get down to maybe like 8 or 9 minutes after you make a couple.
So you can do the math of how many you want to achieve. I know for 2024, this year you wanted to do, was it 30,000?
30,000 is the number of kids that go to the hospital in Michigan every year. So that's our annual mission to build the system towards. But 30,000 sustainable every year, repeat year after year. We're up to about 17,000 sustainable every year right now.
So how are we going to beat that this year?
It's really more groups. We don't need one group to come and make 10,000 blankets. Not realistic. We just need the group that you're involved with, that everyone's listening right now, that you're involved with, your book club, your school, your sports, your business. Can you do your 50, your 100 blanket event once a year? Can you be there for us once a year? It takes a village, but if we can have 300 groups that do their 100 blanket event one a year, we're there.
Are you almost getting to that space? Are you on track to make that happen this year?
I think this year we can get to 20,000 for sure. And then 2025, I think could be the year where 30,000 is possible.
Let's go back to my original question. I have ADHD, so I talk in concentric circles. It's really fun. So you're one person. Who do you go to next to say, okay, I need help with this? How do I scale this business or this nonprofit?
It's definitely a good lesson of like, be nice to people and care a lot. Don't burn bridges, because you're going to need help from people you would have never expected. So the first thing I did was I went back to the places where I had my roots. I went to my high school, to my college, and I started to say, like, this is the dream. Is there a way you can tie in? We got the first blanket event from my cousin's sorority at Central Michigan. I drove up to Mount Pleasant, made 50 blankets, packaged them up, drove them to Mott Children's Hospital, called OU, sorority there, started to just stack these events. One event turned to 5, and 5 to 10, and 10 to 50. And before I knew it, it was like, oh my gosh, we've done hundreds of events now and thousands of blankets. Like, we're rolling here.
And then was it hard for you to start trusting other people? Because as you're scaling, you can't do it alone. So the events are becoming bigger. You realize, I need help. Who is the first person you hire?
The concept of building a team is, like I said, something that's always been fun to me. So that to me is actually one of the more fun parts of finding those people and trusting in them. And yeah, maybe they let you down, maybe they don't, but I really love the rush of that. And so I gave a presentation at Oakland University early on, just asked the teacher, like, hey, can I just come like speak to your class about what I'm doing in your business class? Oh yeah, for sure. Come on out. And this one student emailed me right after and said, hey, I don't really know like what you talked about much, but I think this is cool. Like, and I'd love to be a part of it. And his name was Bryce, and he became a huge part, and he had lots of support that came with him, and then called another friend, Jamie, who helped a ton at the beginning. And so there was like these people that started to emerge the more I shared the story, that stood up and said, I would love to help. And that to me is like an inflection point that a lot of entrepreneurs, they wait too long to take, of like, tell the story. What are you trying to do? What's your mission? Get it out there. You're too scared because like, well, what if it fails tomorrow? Then everyone's going to know I told this story and that's nothing. But if you don't, people aren't going to step up, because they want to help.
Well, I think I'm also realizing that like, if it fails, nobody cares.
Yeah, for sure. They don't.
But what advice can you give me as somebody who is an entrepreneur that really needs to scale a business because I do want to help more people? Do I just simply focus on that? Just focus on the why and not worry about attracting the wrong people? Just think about attracting the right people? Like, how do you go about that?
I got to think that there's maybe 3 things that are part of it. The first thing is that right off the bat, figure out where you're at in your business. And like, do you have processes and you need to find someone who can fit into the processes you've made? Okay, that's one type of person. Or are you moving 1,000 miles an hour and changing tires on the go, and you need someone who can like help you figure it out along the way too and run at that pace? And that's a different type of person. So right off the bat, like figuring out which of those 2 places you might be. Maybe there's a 3rd place, but those 2 stick out to me as like 2 critical places that I've been at. And then from there, you're looking for a specific personality type, and you've got to admit right off the bat that like you're 100%. Someone else can maybe get to like 80%, but that's their 100%. You got to sometimes be like, oh, listen, you're 80%. I'm going to take it because we're going to run because this is a pass and we got to move. That's your 100%. That's awesome. No one will ever probably be at your 100% in your business. And you've got to like be okay with that from the start. Find someone you trust, fit that personality type. Pick the wrong people a couple of times, pick the right ones more than you pick the wrong ones, and roll.
When you have a bad day, do you just take yourself back to the why? Is that sort of what gets you out of bed? What gets you moving is knowing what you're doing and the mission that you're on?
I think 3 things drive me every day. I talked about the responsibility, still feel it today. Gratitude is the second one. I have found gratitude to be such a healing force in my life through the work that we do at Fleece Thank You and Grateful Human, and that podcast. To get to talk about gratitude on a weekly basis is amazing. It's a force. It's intentional. You got to work it like a muscle. But when you do, you can find gratitude in these moments of things and they change your feelings and everything that's happening. And then also, I'm a realist as well. We have to take a step back and take a look. Like, you're born, you're raised, you work, you die. All you have in this life is like the people that you have a relationship with and the legacy that you've left. That's it. And so that helps me in the moments of the bad days of like, oh, I feel like everything's crumbling, but let's look at the big picture here. Do I have the relationships? Is there some legacy to what I'm doing? I'm very grateful for the relationships where I'm at today. I'll find a way through it.
Did you meet your wife pre-Fleece and Thank You, or did you meet her after you started Fleece and Thank You? When did she come into the picture?
My wife's amazing. Shout out to Sarah. I love you. You're awesome. 2 days before I was ready to go to Australia, got a text from my friend who was the chair of a sorority at Oakland and asked if I could MC their male beauty pageant, Mr. Phi Significant. I say yes to everything. Absolutely. I'm there. I'm getting on a plane in 48 hours, but for sure I showed up and Sarah was at this event. We took a big group picture. She was in it. I was in it. We didn't say a word to each other then, didn't know each other. Fast forward 2 years later, I called that same friend who I did one of my first Fleece and Thank You events with, and Sarah showed up to that event. We met for the first time at that event. Here we are today, many years later.
Does she help you with the organization, or does she have her own life completely outside of what you're doing?
She is a data analytics guru. She is Miss Excel, Queen Excel, crushes it for a tech company out of Michigan on their data side. And then obviously she helps me all the time. If I need to pull her to a weekend event or talk about some things, she's always there. But she's got her own data kingdom and she's really, really good at what she does on the HR and data side.
How do you find balance with your schedule? How do you do this?
Managing a schedule is an ongoing journey. To the person who says, I've found the way, this works for me every day and it never breaks, good for you. Everything I'm about to say, I get wrong, slip up, lose focus and find myself back. But I come back to this. Like for me, I wake up at the same time every morning. Sarah and I wake up at 5 o'clock.
Yes. I love a good 5 o'clock wake up. They're the best.
Yeah, for sure. You can get a lot of thought and stuff done. And so from like 5 to 6:30, we're down in the basement. We've treadmill, some weights. Like we're just doing some exercise, talking about the day to come, etc. Head out to the office. I've got my big 3 for the day. I know if I get to the end of today and these 3 things are done, it could have been a good day. And as much we'll try to attack that and things come up and fires and all that, I'm always trying to come back to the big 3 so that when it gets to that 5, 6, 7 o'clock, if I can get those big 3 done, there's always going to be more work. There's always going to be more to do. But big 3 are a huge thing. And when I don't set the big 3, I for sure feel off in my day. I get to the middle of the day and I'm like, wow, I've got so much to do. And I make my big 3 at 2 o'clock. Don't have a lot of time to get 3 big things done here.
When are you setting that intention? Do you know every day what your big 3 is in the beginning of the day? Or are you doing that as you're planning your schedule for the month or the week?
Definitely things are always coming on and hitting it and attacking it. Trying my best at the end of the day to say, okay, what are my big 3 for tomorrow? If I can't get it then it is going to be the first thing I do before I answer an email or get into anything.
Mm-hmm.
It's just really reset of like, what are those big 3 today?
Do you just sort of allow sometimes like, okay, whatever's happening now is whatever's happening now. And if you have to say no to yourself, it just is what it is. How do you balance that?
It's always going to be a trade-off, of course. And so as a business owner, you have to accept that there's going to be times when you are going to choose others over you and your time with loved ones, family is going to suffer because of it in the micro, in that day. If that becomes a habit, then you're on the wrong path. But I don't see a way that I can't in certain days have the greatest of intentions of when I'm going to get my big 3 done. But when the needs come up, though, that time gets taken. And that just means that later that day, I'm going to spend a little bit longer needing to get those done. Now, I could do that 1 or 2 days in a row, but the third day, then I do need to say no to some of the client things because that's the day I need to prioritize the other things. And so every day is a constant shuffle. Like even just as I say it, you can feel it of like, wow, there's a lot of planning that goes into that and a lot of intentionality, because if you stop being intentional about it, you look back and you're like, wow, it's been months and I've worked till 10 p.m. every night. And I can't remember the last time I had a conversation or a meal with my wife.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not okay. But so it's every day being intentional about it. It takes a ton of effort.
With Fleece and Thank You and all the events that are going on and things consistently moving and people being added, do you find it tough to try to be everywhere? Or was there a point in time where you realized I can't be everywhere and now I have to rely on other team members? I can't be the guy that's at every event. And was it hard to sort of realize like I can't be at every event?
This is a real thing. There was for sure a time when I was at every single thing and a time when I realized I couldn't be. When I can, I do make extra efforts to make sure that they know, like, look, just because we've gotten bigger, it doesn't mean that I'm any less grateful for your support. And you just try to be your best authentic self. And hope that people will understand that. And maybe some haven't, and that's okay. And others do, and they're awesome to work with.
Well, because it just leads to burnout sometimes. You want to be the face of everything, but especially if you're growing and you're going to be in multiple cities, probably eventually across the country, you can't be in 50 states.
Yeah, get people on your team who understand that picture as well. And I'm more of a leader who lets my team know more than less. And sometimes that's a bad thing, but I'd rather err on the side of them knowing more than that knowing less. And so that's, one person's opinion on how to do it. But I think keeping them in the loop on as much as possible allows them to understand, okay, yeah, Nich needs to be elsewhere.
Explain to people, how many states are you in now? You're not going to obviously just stop with Michigan. Like, the curious kid who asks a million questions is not just stopping. Like, legitimately, where do you see this going to and growing? And does it almost scare you to scale on such a large level because you can't oversee everything?
So where we're going is, we know that 30,000 kids a year in the state of Michigan go in the hospital. So that's milestone 1 for us. We know that in the Midwest, there's about 151,000 kids that go into the hospital every year. And so Midwest is milestone 2. Across the country, it's about 964,000 kids a year that go into the hospital, plain white sheets, dark beige wallpaper. So our North Star, our 10-year vision is that we will have been able to replicate Fleece and Thank You across all 50 states so that every hospital, every time, every kid is guaranteed a blanket with a video waiting on the bed for them. How we're going to do that is, we're very intentional about building the system in one state, because that playbook can quickly then replicate across states. We take orders, blanket kit orders, so blanket makers, across all 50 states today. In 2023, 2022, and then again in 2024, already this year, we've shipped to all 50 states. And so there's blanket makers all across the country. We've made blankets in 14 countries around the world. Majority of those blankets make their way back to Michigan just because folks choose the easy return label option. But for us, we have the groundwork laid for a playbook where you can do this in every state. Blankets made locally, stay locally. And every kid, every time, gets one. 964,000 blankets a year. Will be the Red Cross of comfort for sure. It'll be far out of my hands at that point, but I'll have hopefully been a part of building the team that's making it possible.
Do you guys pre-cut stuff for people? Like, just so people understand, you're not there with scissors anymore.
Totally. Yeah. We used to get the fabric in big, rolls, and we were cutting it in-house with scissors. Now we found partners that can help cut that with machines. We have 2 options now. We have the regular blanket kit or the pre-cut kit. So if you're a group that doesn't want to do any cutting at all, great, we've got an option for you. Some groups still like to have the scissors, so we've got that option as well. So we've definitely sophisticated in that offering to make sure everyone can get what they want.
And people don't need to feel like they have to join a huge event. They can literally just go on the website. What's the website? And select the blanket from home option.
Anyone could get involved. fleeceandthankyou.org. There's a big order kits button in the top right. Thousands of people a year just order 1 and 2 blanket kits and get them shipped to their home, make them with the family, and ship them right back.
If it doesn't get shipped back, does it go towards your numbers? Or if they want to donate to their local hospital, that doesn't include your final number, or does it?
If they're in Michigan, they're going to have to ship it back or get it back to us, because now we're exclusively serving some of these hospitals. So they won't accept blankets that aren't laundered and dried by Fleece and Thank You. But outside of Michigan, for sure, we don't mind. If you've got a local hospital and want to deliver there, you're absolutely welcome to do so. And we've even now ventured out into some groups that work with foster care youth or kids of deployed service members and things. So definitely we accommodate the blanket makers' desires.
Did you even think about that impact of what happens after?
I think I was probably 80% focused on like the metrics of it. Like, okay, 30,000 blankets, how many groups? Okay, we need this much square footage of facility, this much fabric, etc. But the other 20%, make sure you realize 150,000 people touched our process last year throughout the country. And that's so many touch points of people who heard about our mission, and 15,000 plus kids got a blanket. If every kid has an average of 2 family members that are coming in and visiting them, like that's a lot of people that are seeing and touching and being a part of this. And that's really, really cool.
With events like the golf event that you guys are having coming up, do you have, beyond that one event, do you have other fundraising events that's specifically in that similar vein where it's not making blankets, it's to raise money?
The golf outing's the big fundraising one. And then the other big event we put on is our Make a Blanket Day event, which is in September of this year. It's where we set the Guinness World Record. And that's like thousands of people, thousands of blankets, one day, one place, knock it out in a couple hours. And those are the 2 big events that we do every year.
Did you announce where that's going to be in September yet? Or you don't want to announce anything
Just
yet?
Came live with it in the middle of April here. Saturday, September 21st, 2024 at UWM Sports Complex in Pontiac, Michigan. It's a big 100,000 square foot room. We take the whole thing over. We'd like to get 1,000 people out there and make 1,000 blankets that day.
How do we sign up for that event?
fty.charity/MABD24. It's a no cost event. So all the blankets are funded by sponsorship ahead of time, corporate and community sponsorship. You just sign up, register, $0 registration, come and make one blanket, make 100. Festival, carnival type atmosphere. There's dunk tanks and face painting and giveaways and all kinds of cool things. It's a really, really cool event.
But what advice do you have for people like me where we're trying to show up consistently for ourselves? We're trying to come from that authentic space. What advice do you have for people just to keep going and keep doing it?
Practice gratitude, and as you're building your business, never forget the things that you're grateful for. Those thoughts will really carry you through tough times. Second to that, don't do it alone, because I haven't met anybody that does it alone. So put yourself in communities, groups, friends. And that's on a mentorship side as well. When I face some of my biggest problems or curveballs, I'm probably within an hour calling 3 or 4 people on my list that are my true mentors. So I think gratitude and community are the 2 things that I know work for me. And without either of those, I'd be hurting.
With the Grateful Human podcast, why did you want to even start that? What part of you was like, I want to add more work to my schedule?
There's 2 reasons for the Grateful Human podcast. One is business oriented and the other is altruistic. The business oriented one is it's a great touch point for us to get in with a brand that hey, there's not really an ask here. We're not asking you yet to make blankets or give dollars. We just want to talk to your CEO, founder, president, head of whatever about what they're grateful for. Few people say no to that. So it's a really cool way to get to make new friends, grow our community. And then on the altruistic side, gratitude is so powerful, but not as often talked about as it needs to be. Can we do surgery on gratitude and figure out what makes this thing so powerful? And is there anything replicable that others can take away from it? Because it's often you hear the phrase you should be grateful daily or be grateful every day, but it's in moments. That takes real work and intentionality and flexing the muscle. And there's a lot to it, and both sides are why we do it.
Have you ever had a negative thought in your head, or do you always come from a positive place? And was there a time where you realized no, I've got to flip this. I can't keep thinking from this negative space?
The majority of me has been positive for sure. Sometimes I've learned that someone doesn't want to hear that. I've definitely gotten better at sitting in the problem with someone. Generally, I've been positive, more so optimistic. I call it naive optimism. I say it all the time. I'm naively optimistic about life. And I know that there's bad times, hard things, bad cards. Yeah, this is how I am.
Nick, thank you so much for doing this with me. I love that you actually give your time to everybody. You are very giving. I really do appreciate everything that you do. And I love what you're doing. And I can't wait to watch you guys grow. I can't wait to see where it goes. It's going to be insane.
Thank you very much for the time. I'm really grateful that we had this time and just honored that you'd asked me to be on. So thanks, Rachel.
I'll see you soon.